Thank you. Welcome to the City Council meeting of Wednesday, September 1st, 2010. Could I have the roll call, please?
Andrea Burns. Present. Justin Cobb.
Present.
Ron Shatanoff.
Present.
Donald Sikowski.
Here.
Salem Derby. Present. Daniel Hagan.
Present.
Joseph McCoy.
Here.
Dan Riss.
Here.
Joy Winnie. Here.
Could I have a motion for the approval of the minutes from August 4th, 2010?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second for the approval of the minutes for August 4th, 2010. Any discussions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Abstentions? One abstention. Okay, terrific. Public speak time. If there's anyone here from the public who would like to address the council considering anything other than what's on the public hearings, please come to the podium and state your name and address, please.
Thank you. My name is Hazel Bergens-Adolfson. I'm here representing the Peace Group from the Lathrop Retirement Community in Easthampton. I have the privilege of working with the Peace Group, who are organizing a silent art auction on the weekend of September 11th and 12th from 3 to 5 in the afternoon. It's for the benefit of Jackie Kay's house in Leeds, Massachusetts. It was Susan Kaplan on NPR who brought the attention to the public and to the Peace Group at the Lathrop community, and they have decided to do something to help the homeless women veterans who live in Leeds, Massachusetts. This is one of 2 sites in the nation. So we are collecting donations from area artists. They have been very generous. We have almost 100 donations, and we hope to have a very successful weekend on September 11th and 12th at the Lathrop community, 70 Florence Road. It'll be in the Richmond House. And I've put these around town and Northampton and many other communities, so I hope we've done enough advertising. Thank you.
Is there a deadline for submissions?
There is a deadline for submissions, and I've handed out the brochures to everyone on the council.
August 15th.
August 15th. We are still accepting.
I was going to say, we missed it.
We are still accepting submissions. The submissions were the sheets of paper, so we could get an idea and know how far we were reaching. We know now that we're pretty comfortable. So the submission was for the paperwork, and the donations are coming in on September 10th, 7 to 9 in the evening. That's listed in the brochure. And the next morning, September 11th, 11 to 1 in the morning. So I did pass out the brochure that you have is for donations. They have come in, but I just thought I'd give you all the information I had tonight. And on that brochure that's got the fold are the contact names of Elsie Hascarl and Barbara Snook, with whom I am working.
Terrific. Thank you for the information.
Thank you.
Okay, communications from elected officials, boards, and committee. I guess I would just like to make one announcement. Some of you already know what's kind of been a long time coming is there is indeed an active Easthampton City Council Facebook page. So all those who are Facebook users, please check in and sign on to become a friend of the Easthampton City Council. What the purpose of this Facebook page was to disseminate information, agendas, minutes of City Council meetings, to find another way to keep the public informed of what is going on in City Council and information and meetings so you don't miss any. So please, we're trying to find other ways to reach out, and if you're a Facebook user, please take advantage of it. And Matt Pylon, it'd be great if you mentioned that. Thank you very much. Okay, correspondence, Councilor Rist.
We received a letter from the Hampshire Council of Governments. This is a letter regarding the effort to advance regionalization. They are particularly of interest to us would be the Group Insurance Trust and the Hampshire Power, fully licensed competitive electric supplier. I think this is interesting, and I think we should all take note. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Communications, Mayor Tosnick.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I could just back up to your previous correspondence, the city does participate in the Group Insurance Trust, and we are purchasing a portion of our power through the Hampshire County Cooperative Program.
Okay.
And if you're free tomorrow, the Franklin Regional Council of Governments is holding a statewide regionalization meeting in Worcester at Holy Cross College. Starts at 9 o'clock. And I'll be there. The only correspondence I have tonight, Mr. President, is just a copy of a letter we received from the City of Lowell. I don't know if the City Council received it, so my purpose is simply to forward it to you. If you hadn't gotten it, for your consideration, the City Council in Lowell has adopted a legislative petition.
Is this something that you would like to have the council act upon as far as?
Yes, I would like you to consider it. I think it's a prudent idea. The issue is the ability to adjust the coverage in the locally sponsored health insurance plan without getting full approval from the unions. Legislature has not seen fit to make that change in state law, and this petition by the Lowell City Council is requesting that they be allowed, as a home rule petition, to be able to do a change in benefits. I believe, although I haven't read it fully, I believe it's through the City Council. Most of the proposals that we've been making over the years have said, give the City Council the same sort of authority that the GIC has in setting what the plan design is, without getting unanimous approval.
Mr. President.
Mary, you have a question?
No, I was going to make a motion that we send this to Rules and Government Relations for review.
Okay.
That's a motion.
I'll second it then. A motion and a second to move this to Rules and Regulations for review. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, so we've taken care of that business and moved it to subcommittee. Starting our standing committees, Finance, Councilor Todd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since there's nothing in rules and government relations. What we have,
Oh.
okay. We met on the 14th of August to actually go through some items. One of these is up at public hearing tonight. What I have here is a couple of things that I'd just like to state. On our next agenda, we will be discussing the interdepartmental transfer of $920.80. We will continue our discussion on the $200,000 supplemental appropriation for long-term affordable housing at 69 Parsons Street. And if there's any further information, we've already voted, but this is a double check I do on some items for the supplemental reduction request. Those items will be on our agenda for our next meeting, which is 9/8/10 at 50 Payson Avenue at 6:30. That said, I do have a couple public hearings I'd like to set. I'll state what they are and then claim them in the form of a motion. The first is I'd like to set a public hearing for 9/15 in these chambers at 6:15 for the supplemental appropriation of $200,000 to provide long-term affordable housing at 69 Parsons Street. And the second item, I'd like to set a public hearing for a supplemental reduction request for the $147,274 reduction in Chapter 70 receipts, again, for September 15th, 6:15 in these chambers. I state that in the form of a motion.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second for setting the public hearings, 9:15, 6:15 p.m. for the $200,000 for the long-term affordable housing on 69 Parsons Street and the $147,274 reduction in Chapter 70 receipts. Any additional comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes.
I have one more item. I'd like to ask in the form of a motion for a 60-day extension of the supplemental appropriation for $200,000 to provide long-term affordable housing at 69 Parsons Street.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second for a 60-day extension on the $200,000 long-term affordable housing for 69 Parsons Street. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
That concludes my committee report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry, I skipped over rules and regulations. Counselor Derby?
Thank you, Mr. President. No report.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, apologize for that. Public safety, is that Counselor Psychowski?
No report this evening. We didn't need the Texas Rangers.
Okay, appointments, Counselor Winnie.
Thank you, Mr. President. We held our appointment subcommittee meeting on Monday, August 30th. We reviewed 2 mayoral appointments for recommendation tonight, and I will put this in the form of a motion. Both the mayoral appointments were voted on as 3-0 unanimous going forward. The first was Bruce W. McMahon, Chief of Police, with a term expiration of December 31st, 2015. And the second was Nancy Fallensby for School Building Committee, term expiration on December 31st, 2010.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for the approval of reappointment of Bruce McMahon as Chief of Police and Nancy Folensby, the School Building Committee. Any additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
Thank you. We then reviewed the recommendation to the full city council for the following city council appointment. And that would be Barbara L. Bombard as our city clerk with her term expiration of August 31st, 2015. Again, we voted on that. There was much discussion and acclamations about Barbara, and it obviously passed 3-0 unanimous. And I will make that in the form of a motion that we reappoint Mrs. LaBombard, who as our city clerk.
Okay, we have a motion.
Clerk to the council, not the city.
Well, clerk to the council. Thank you.
Two different
Sorry, our
cities.
second clerk.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for reappointment as to Barbara Lombard, clerk to the city council. Any additional discussions or accolades you want to throw out?
She's wonderful.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
And we also had the opportunity to meet with our city assessor, Mark Tomorrow, and our personnel manager, Raisa Regat. We reviewed department operations with Mr. Tomorrow, and we also did a follow-up from our previous meetings as to whether or not he had completed some other assignments that the city council had given him, and Ms. Riggett assured us definitely that everything had been completed above and beyond to her satisfaction.
Terrific.
Good,
So
good
that
news.
is, we ended our meeting, and I would like to just make the announcement that our next meeting will be September 15th at 5:30 here at White Brook Middle School in the music room to review the 2 mayoral appointments that will be given to us tonight.
Okay, thank you very
And
much.
that's the end of my report, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Ordinance, Counselor Shattunoff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a couple of upcoming meetings to announce. First, on September 9th at 6 p.m., 50 Payson in Conference Room 1. We'll continue the public hearing on Section 10 signs. And on September 13th at 50 Payson, Conference Room 1, 6 p.m., we will take up the request from the police department to address an ordinance on consumption of alcohol and also one on obstructing passage. So that's on the 13th of September. I'd like to make a motion to schedule a public hearing for 9:15 at 6:15 p.m. here in these chambers for the full city council to take up the 2 requests from the police department.
So that, well, the consumption of alcohol and
The consumption of alcohol and the obstructing passage. To make that form of motion.
Second.
okay, so we have a motion, a second, to set public hearings for September 15th, 6:15 p.m. to review the consumption of alcoholic beverages on public ways as well as the obstruction of passage of others. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, public hearings have been set. Thank you.
That concludes my report. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Property, Counselor Cobb.
Thank you, Mr. President. No report at this time.
Okay, thank you. Charter Review Ad Hoc Committee, Counselor Rist.
Yes, Mr. President, we are meeting tomorrow night. We may be able to conclude our final recommendations on charter changes. And on September 23rd, we intend to meet with the mayor to go over those changes. That's all. Now, that meeting, both meetings are at 5:30 at 50 Payson, Room 1.
Great, thank you very much.
Excuse me. Tomorrow night's meeting is 5:15. I apologize.
Okay, 5:15. Still room 1. Okay, I think we can try to take a minute just to do our new business. We have 2 mayoral appointments. Counselor Winnie?
Thank you. We have 2 mayoral appointments, as you said, the first being 12/31/2013, and Brian Fink for the Board of Registrars with expiration date of 12/31/2010. Term expiration.
So that's a motion to send to committee, right?
Motion, yes. I would make that, move that as a motion to send to appointment subcommittee.
Second?
Okay, so we have a motion, a second, to move the appointments of Melissa Zawadzki as Finance Director and Brian Fink, the Board of Registers Committee. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstain. Okay, could I please have a motion for opening a public hearing?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion to open public hearings. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Public hearings have been opened. Counselor Cobb.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to give a brief introduction, and I'm going to turn this over to one of my comrades on the Finance Committee, Counselor Hagan, on the end, to give a more detailed report. I'd like to note that as we approach this item, that the CPA Committee voted favorably for this when it came to our committee, and the Finance Committee voted 3-0 in support of this. That said, I'll turn it over to Counselor on the end to report out on this.
I know that public hearing will open, and I'm sure the city planner will be able to fill in any gaps I have about the history of this, but apparently this has been an ongoing type of funding project for affordable housing. It's just that this is a new funding source. It's the first time that CPA funds are going to be used to rehab low and moderate income households. When it first came up to the Finance Subcommittee, there was a little bit of apprehension, mainly by myself, because I felt that there might not be enough transparency in the process, because really we're letting taxpayers' funds, kind of the use of taxpayers' funds be put into another agency. And for that reason, I went down at the direction of Chairman Cobb and spoke to the head of the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, because he didn't come to the first meeting, Mr. James Mazik. And I will say Mr. Mazik was very helpful. I think he answered a lot of my questions, which I reported back to the committee about the process. They have a very extensive application process. This is for units outside of the target zone, which is also a new twist on it. And I think if what Mr. Mazik said, they'll take people that are already on an existing list. They have a current list of people that have applied for this and see if they're still interested, and then make a decision of how many units, depending on what type of application it is, can be rehabbed for the 99,000. Of that 99,000, about 85,500 would actually go into the units, and some of their administrative and consulting costs by Pioneer Valley Committee. He said that only about 10% of people don't keep their houses through the whole process. Because if someone doesn't keep their house or sells their house before the 15 years is up under this grant, that it goes back to the city through something that's placed on the Registrar of Deeds. The one fact he did say that should be important to the council is these units will not count for our percentage of affordable housing, however. They are not units that would be counted on for our percentage of affordable housing. Again, I'll reserve any other comments I have till the public hearing is over and we get in front of the council. But I just wanted to give you a little more, that we did try to go into it in depth over 2 weeks, and as Chairman Cobb said, it did come out of the Finance Committee with a 3-0 recommendation for approval to the full council.
So is there anybody here for public who would like to speak to this issue? Please come to the podium and state your name. Mayor?
Yeah, I'd like to speak in favor of it, and I'd also, although it's not directly germane to your vote tonight, I'd like to suggest that you ask for legislative relief from that administrative decision to not let these houses count as part of the affordable housing. That's an administrative decision. It can be rectified through legislative change. I'd suggest that that would be a smart thing to do. Beyond that, Councilor Hagan has everything that he said I can concur with. He's given you a good synopsis of what it is. We've used literally millions of federal dollars that have been passed through the Community Development Block Grant Program for these kinds of repairs in Easthampton. We're very satisfied with the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission's activity. They've been doing a good job with the CDBG monies that have gone to them, and we think they'll do an excellent job with the CPA monies that we would hopefully be able to provide with your support. Thank you.
Anybody else would like to address them? Please also just state your name, address for the record.
Hi, I'm Jackie Russo Pereira. I live here in Easthampton. I'm also on the Easthampton Housing Partnership. You probably remember about a year ago, we came before you and asked your support for a request for proposals that was going to be issued to the community seeking projects to support the creation and maintenance of affordable housing. So this is one of the projects that actually came as a result of that RFP. So we're really pleased to be able to present that to you for support. We're very supportive of it. We think it's a really good use of funds. We like that it's outside the target area. The CDBG target area was forced upon us by the Department of Housing and Community Development, so the block grant money can only be used there. So this is an opportunity to help some folks outside that target area who still need it. And if when you think about the people who are going to use this money, it's probably going to be someone like a senior couple on a fixed income who have a leak in their roof. This is the kind of folks that use this sort of program. So when they come to PVPC and they get their house fixed, not only does it help them to be able to stay in their house, but it helps the whole entire neighborhood to sort of come up. So, it's when you think about it that way, it's really a small investment for 3 or 4 households to be able to be maintained and rehabilitated, and they're for folks who can't really afford to do it themselves. And it's bringing up the quality of the neighborhood, not just that one particular house. So there are several of us here from the Easthampton Housing Partnership. We all really liked this proposal, and we really hope you look favorably upon it. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak? Stuart, can we call you up? Would that be willing to? I know Councilor Hagan alluded to it, but what exactly is the reason why this won't, because these are deed restricted, as I understand, what is the catch here, that whether or not won't be counted towards our affordable housing quota?
Yes, we had actually, or I had actually presented to the CPA committee when we were first recommending this, that they would count, and the reason they won't count, they may not count, that it's, historically these units have counted and they are on our list, so it's disappointing that Jim's interpretation, which I don't doubt because he's a very expert person on the subject, but it's disappointing that these 3 might not count, or it's possible that the state may take a step back and say our philosophy has been wrong for the past 10 to 15 years, and the units that are listed now won't count either. The main reason is that they don't have a marketing plan. There's no process to assure there's a deed restriction that assures their affordability, but there's no process to ensure that future residents of that building will also be lower moderate income, which if you were a private homeowner, I'm not sure you would want to sign such a thing, in that it clearly would affect the marketability of your unit, whereas now, if you are going to move, you can pay the city back, and you're free from, at least for a single-family home. So I think it's primarily due that we can't meet the marketing requirement. We can meet the long-term affordability requirement, although for most units, it's 30 years or more for affordability restriction, and then for this program, it has historically been 15 years.
Okay. Councilor Brisk.
Can I follow up in that you seem to be implying that these kind of projects have been approved as counting toward our affordability quota, not necessarily ours, but other communities?
No, ours, but yes.
And they have in the past?
Yes.
So this is a new interpretation, or has the law administrative?
It's a new, tougher interpretation of the law. The law hasn't
And that's an
changed.
interpretation by?
The attorneys of the Department of Housing and Community Development.
I figured there'd be attorneys involved. Okay, thank you.
Any additional comments, Councilor Hagan?
Just for the public's information, can you explain where the target area is and what's outside the target area? In other words, what
Yep.
is generally the target?
Okay. Generally, the target area is the downtown, Main Street, Pleasant Street, Union Street, Cottage Street, out to the end of Pleasant to Ferry and New City, and then the neighborhoods along Holyoke Street as well. So it forms a fairly large triangle. And then the areas outside of that area, which would be the southern section of town and the northern section of town, those would be outside the target area and would be eligible for this.
Any additional, Counselor Sikowski?
Stuart, in the perspectives here, it says, all owners or a majority of renters must fall within Section 8 income guidelines. Now, if they fall, now, the thing of it is, we're not allowed in this community to count Section 8 certificates because they're issued from Northampton, Springfield, and Holyoke.
Yes.
Now, is that going to be a catch-22 proposition for us going forward, to be able to say that these are low-income units like you were talking before would, like, are we going to be able, are we going to be able to get around that Section 8? Because I'm very upset about that Section 8, that we can't count them, because there's a lot of certificates in this town. And I'm asking you again, can you get me the number of how many Section 8 certificates there are in this town? I'd like to find that out. I think the council should know that.
Yep, I can try to find that out. Just want to point out what it says is that they're going to meet the income guidelines. Primarily this works for homeowners, not renters, although rental properties are eligible. So it's more setting the income level of the people that can use the program. It's not that there will be Section 8 certificates tied to the units.
Just a follow-up question. Are we targeting more single-family homes and duplexes and tenements and stuff like that in this perspective?
It's not that we target that, but I don't know, at least 95% of the units fall under that because there's an additional requirement for investor rental properties in that
Yeah, I saw
even where a single family at the end of when they're ready to move or to sell the unit, they can pay the city back. The rental property can do that as well, but the restriction stays with the property, whereas with the single, so there's rent restrictions for the full 15 years, whether or not it's paid back, whereas in single family, that's not the case.
I'm done.
Any additional questions for city planner? No? Thank you very much, Stuart.
Thank you.
Anyone else would like to come and speak to the issue of the public CPA funds? Okay, not seeing any. Councilor Cobb, would you like to make a motion?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that, one, this is an appropriate use of funds, and that the city council approve the supplemental appropriation of $99,000 of CPA funds for affordable housing program outside the community development block grant target area, as presented tonight.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second for the appropriation of $99,000 from the CPA Housing Fund for affordable housing rehabilitation program outside the CDBG target area. Any additional comments from any of the councilors? Councilor Cobb.
Thank you. I'd like to note that this actually meets my conservative definition of what Community Preservation Act money should be used for. And I also strongly believe that this is an excellent program. It does help those in need, especially residents of Easthampton in need, and feel very strongly that we should, and hope we vote in support of this. Thank you.
Any other comment? Councilor Shachinoff.
I'd just like to speak in favor of it. I think it's a good program to try and reach out to people outside the target area and help other neighborhoods keep their housing stock in good condition.
Okay, thank you. What else? I mean, I would have to speak, I'm part of the Finance Committee as well, and was there for the presentations, and especially when I'm dealing with CPA funds, it seems so hard to have a good affordable housing project, and we actually have two that we're investigating right now, which I think is really great because they're usually hard to come by. I think I like the creative idea of this. Obviously, what we like to see the developer coming with projects doesn't seem to be happening in this economy, and so to be creative enough and independent enough to look outside the box, to think about outside the target area, to think about already owned homes, I think is a good idea. It does serve several purposes. I think it does increase the value of that home, which will then increase the value of that neighborhood. It's also, deed restriction, so this is not like the city is just giving people money to fix up their homes and end of story. This is deed restricted. There is, Stuart mentioned, there is the option to pay back to get away from that deed restriction, but the intent obviously is there is to keep this property for several years anyway affordable. So that's my opinion. I will also be voting in favor of it. Any additional comments? Councilor Psychowski.
Well, I'm going to go in a different direction because I'm still very uncomfortable with the whole process. So I'm going to abstain from the vote. I just wanted to get that out early before you hear my abstention. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if there's no more discussion, I think we can probably do this on a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
Me?
Okay, motion passes.
Move the public hearings be closed.
Okay, we have a motion, a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Public hearing closed. And I believe we have completed all business, so I'll entertain a motion to close
So
the meeting.
move to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to
I'll
adjourn.
second.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes, meeting adjourned. See you on the 15th. Thank you very much.
I'm not signing anything anymore.
Joy made one.